we turn so many things into ultimate things, and those things will all leave us bankrupt. That's why I'm always pushing people to say, hey, what's your anchor in?
Hey, welcome back to All In with Rick Jordan. I'm always your host. I'm here with Thaddeus Searcy today. Thaddeus, what's up, brother?
Hey, man, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
We're going to dive right in. This is exciting.
Hey, I'm with it. I'm excited to be here, not just because this is my first time on All In, but also our relationship, the years we've known each other. It's just an honor to be here, my friend.
Well, thanks, my man. Thank you. Today, we're going to talk about some pretty hard-hitting stuff. I mean,
nothing new this year.
I know. Death, family, Christmas. You know, you're here because this is our Christmas episode, which is awesome. Dude,
okay,
privilege
perfect.
that you're here. It's awesome.
Oh, man.
Diving right in, I mean, this year, this has been something on my heart because family is just ripped apart this year, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And no matter what state you're in, I mean, if it's New York, if it's California, if it's Illinois, we've got some pretty serious lockdowns going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
Even to the points of where governors are telling people not to go see family for the holidays.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, I thought we were going to start with the high fives and
I know, right?
But I mean, this year, if you can think through the process that a lot of people went on early on in the year, thinking through what this COVID might mean personally, individually. I mean, we've all had to walk through different types of scenarios or like how David said, let us teach us, God, to consider our days,
man.
But I think just like you talk a lot about on your podcast, man, it's always about pivoting, changing. How do you take a scenario that may seem dramatically different than it has been in the past, and how do you turn it into something amazing? So
I love that.
Most of the people that I'm around, and I joke about this in my sermons off and on about how my kids are there e-learning, and it's like they never leave. Now, I say that in jest. I got 4 kids, high schooler, thinks she knows everything.
Can't you go outside or something?
They never leave. But, I'm a spiritual guy. I think everything is spiritual. And I think about this idea of, let's just say, turning the hearts of the fathers back to the children, right? So you can either sit back and say, this is the worst Christmas. This is a struggle. I'm tired of being with the people. Or you can sit back in your own home and invest in those people. Now, I know I told you this. We just started getting a whole bunch of CrossFit gear, and my boys, for the first time, they don't have a PE class.
Yeah.
So they're with me in the gym every night. We're hitting weights. We're doing box jumps. And what I'm realizing is that even though this has changed the way all of us work and all of us do life, on the home front, I'm able to connect more with the people I love, with the people that mean everything to me. So that's why I think, especially during the Christmas time, how we need to pivot, how we need to dive in or go all in with those relationships that actually matter, the people that run around the world looking like you, And so I think that's the starting point that we've taken in our home.
That's awesome, man. I love the approach you take to this too, because it's funny in one sense that you've got your kids around all the time, and
all the time.
My kids have been around all the time.
All the time. The fridge is always, there's always food missing. I mean, they're just there all the time.
Yeah, that's funny. My kids have been involved in e-learning or even before COVID.
Okay.
I've talked about this before on the show, but it's been interesting seeing that transition because we went through it early on too, but they found like their own place in the house. Right.
Okay.
And our house is larger, it's like, it's almost 5,000 square feet. There's places to go.
Oh yeah. But, they got their own office.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
But when we were filming Liberty Lockdown, the movie which you were in, which was awesome.
Oh man, it's incredible.
Thank you. We were filming some kids that were having difficulties with e-learning. And what most of America really is, that 1,500 square foot home.
Oh yeah.
That 2,500 square foot home, to where it's harder to separate yourselves or maybe you have more kids because you have 4 kids.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's not just the separation, but I mean, how many families have 2 individuals working in the home?
Yeah.
And they're struggling, and then the kids are, even for us, we've had to manage with our oldest daughter watching the others when I had to go off and do something, or if Joanna had to do something. And so there's so many layers where people have had to shift. But I think, especially in line with the way you're talking to the people that are watching your podcast, is, I mean, all of life, you have to be ready for these pivots. Change who knew you would start off with an IT company and then end up doing podcasts and reaching out
Sure.
and all of the security stuff. So you've had to pivot. And if you don't have just a healthy view of change and pivoting, I mean, you're not going to be able to navigate through anything in life, because it's always shifting. It's always changing.
Yeah. The separation this year has been rough, I know, on a lot. And
Oh yeah.
the perspective of the kids too is something I like to think about in what's going on. Because as adults, we're thinking, oh, this sucks. I can't.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can't get away from my kids at this point, or Christmas, which we're talking about. We can't see our family, if parents are still alive. I know both of yours passed, and we'll get into that too.
Yeah.
But my mom has a stroke victim husband. They aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
He's in that high risk category because of all this. So nobody's seeing them. We usually host, my family usually hosts all the time.
Yeah.
We have both sides of the family over same time and have these big, amazing parties for Christmas. And this year it's just like crickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I've seen it with our kids that it's kind of hit them the hardest from their perspective, because we're going to Florida because that state's open. We can actually do this for Christmas. But two out of the 3 of my kids, they were saying, well, I don't think I want to go. We want to see grandma. We want to see grandpa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I go back and forth with my wife about this, but I feel, as a church, we were always live. That was our bread and butter. And from one week to the next, we had to find a camera team, figure out the logistics of it, and come up with something that we could present online.
That was impressive.
Literally 1 week to the next. And now that we're in this world, even though we're hoping everything opens and that things come back live, we realized how big our reach was.
Yeah.
Just by being on a different platform. We had our Easter video hit 10,000 views.
Yeah, that was incredible.
So we're seeing the shift, but our kids, we're on the tail end of Gen X. Our kids this is the world they're going to live in.
Yeah.
So I think them being on Zoom, and I don't think anything's ever going to replace that tangible touch, but I'm embracing it because I feel like our kids are going to be better prepared for the world that's coming, where things are going to be more digital. I mean, I would imagine they would have, meetings where, it's holograms, and you never really have to be in person unless you want to. So we're using this opportunity, even as a church, like after service, people wanted to have that fellowship. So what do? Open up a Zoom call. 250 people show up on a Zoom call. Hey, how we doing? Tell some jokes. And you get this little
that's fantastic
fellowship. And you'll notice with your own kids, what are they doing now? They're on Fortnite. Why are they playing Fortnite incessantly? We played games too, but it was Mike Tyson Punch Out and everybody had to be in the room. But my kids they're friends, the people they connect with, they're talking trash. This is the new wave. And so at some level, they're going to be better prepared for this digital world that we're already really living in. So that's how, it doesn't take away from the richness of, and that's probably, if I had one point of, grief, I wonder for the older people, let's say you're in the final stages of life, you're in your 80s, you're in your 90s. I would risk it, I think. I would come out, if you were my son and my grandkids, I think I would risk it, because you have to weigh out the quality of life versus, the risk.
Sure.
And what are you giving up? And that's who I grieve for the most, at least during this time, people that are more susceptible, the older people. So,
yeah.
But hey, Zoom works for them too.
It does. That's the impressive thing, man. I'll never forget too. My wife's grandmother. I mean, we're talking, 15 years ago, whatever it was, and she was in her 80s, and this is when really the internet was flying. It was around for maybe 8 years at this point, which was still kind of new.
Oh yeah.
And I remember, I even think of like the cell phones and how they thought senior citizens, the elderly always wanted like the big number phones, so that they were the stereotyped.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is what you want. Well, no, really. But then I look at my grandmother-in-law, if I can call her that, and she's making greeting cards and doing all these other things on her computer that she has. And today it's like Zoom, even with the older generation, is just caught on so fast.
Oh, so fast.
And it's cool to see that it's like we underestimated everybody, I think, in this. And even underestimated how much one side of people might just obey just blindly, and the other side of people would be like, you know what, maybe I do want to go risk it.
Yeah.
Because you get into your 70s and 80s, and you're thinking, it's like, well, if it's not the COVID, what else is it going to be? Is it going to be the flu next year, that's going to take somebody? Because we had a flu pandemic 12 years ago.
Yep.
Right. And it always hits the elderly even more so. What's going to happen then? Are we going to say no family at that point? But
you have to embrace the change.
Yeah.
People in general resist change. We hate change. We develop a way of doing life, and then when something else comes up, we're dreaming for it to go back to the way it was, rather than embracing the new and moving forward. And I think as long as you can keep that mindset, and I don't want to pretend like I wasn't worried. Like I didn't have this feeling of like, oh my God, what's this going to look like? But at some point you got to just embrace the journey and go and allow that change to be the new norm at whatever level it looks like.
Yeah.
So.
That's great for adults, and I'm with you on that. How do you help our kids during this time? What do you tell everyone that attends Freedom? Because kids are struggling during this time. I mean, I told you about my kids,
Yeah. Well, I mean, this has been a weird year because everyone has had a different perspective, and we had to be aware of other people's positions. So, but you'll find some people want their kids to hang out with other kids. Some people allow their kids to do certain things. I mean, if the kids in the neighborhood that are in the same school system with my kids, we talk with their parents, everybody had their COVID tests, and on their recess, they come over and they play ball. Kids are always looking to us for leadership. They're looking to us to see if everything's okay. And if just same way with your corporation, same way with the church. If I walk into Freedom Church and I say, hey guys, the sky is falling, we're not going to make it, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, then all of a sudden everybody loses hope. And kids, even at a greater degree, they're watching us.
Yeah.
And so I'm always reaffirming who they're going to be in life, how this is going to happen, the friendships they need to be, cultivating during this time. And so I'm hoping that they come through this with a bit more of a perspective. And when being in a church situation, when people die, I'm very honest with my friends about the realities of life and why we're in this predicament and what's going on and who's at risk. So I want them to be well-informed and aware of this whole situation so that when we get to the other side of it, hopefully they'll be grateful.
Yeah.
Okay, this wasn't normal before. I used to have to sit in my room and talk to people through the screen, but now here I am. So now our hearts should be filled with gratitude when we get to the other side of it. So that's how, at least for sure, personally, how I'm dealing with my family.
I was at just lunch with my oldest son the other day.
Now, how old is your oldest?
He's 13.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was talking about one of his friends, and I think it was about COVID we were talking about, and they were his parents, because everybody has different views, and I was saying, well, everybody's perspective, at least in their own mind, is right.
Mm-hmm.
And my 13-year-old understands this, and he starts asking these questions. I'm like, well, you're pretty dead on, because this is more of a logical conversation that we're having rather than one that's based on fear.
Mm-hmm.
And he just like puts his head down and he goes, Dad, thank you for always being honest with us.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's important because kids, all they're really looking for in parents, I think anyways, is vulnerability.
Mm.
Just the straight truth. And even sometimes that even means saying, I don't know
Yeah.
to your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And saying, but I don't know, but we're still going to go through this journey together. I'll take the first step. I'm your dad. I'm leading. That's cool, but you're going to be right beside me.
Oh man, that vulnerability, that honesty is something I think that, I mean, you could close the podcast on that, because it's real. You know, in our situation, I mean, our kids have, and especially pastoring in a larger church, I mean, we have deaths. We have people going through crazy stuff. We had a guy, a good friend of mine who was attending the church, 44 years old, had a stroke. And, you know, he's still on life support. And so as these situations, they're always coming through our household. And you'll notice, you know, the younger kids, they don't know what's going on. But my oldest is 15 and she's aware. And the more honest I am, and even with my own feelings in relation to these weightier topics of life, when they see that, they gravitate to that, and they understand and they're able to process better. I think that's the beginning of wisdom. That's the beginning of the fear of God. When, you know, that's why the psalmist says, teach us to number our days. I was having a conversation with my oldest and I said, you've never thought about death. And she was like, yeah, that's true. You know, and I think back in my own life, how I went through so many years just believing I was invincible.
Oh yeah, man.
Until something happens, and then you become awakened to the reality of life and these things. But once you become awakened to that reality, then you can actually process, and you realize it's kind of like if you were a procrastinator all your life. You know, some of us are just born that way. When you get to the last day, you start writing the paper, you start studying at the last minute, because you know tomorrow I got to do this.
Yeah.
But what if life were on this board, this sheet, where you realized, okay, this isn't going to be forever. How would you now then navigate through today and through the next week and through the next month? So the sooner people understand that reality and they can walk in that, they start living more on purpose. That's how, you know, so that's something that, and you know, every child is different, you know. Your son is super sharp and he's thinking deeply about life. And so he's the type of person that'll be able to handle that and move forward with that. So it's valuable even for adults to consider our days, consider, you know, time, and be purposeful about our lives.
Yeah.
So
being ordained myself, I was a pastor in a couple of churches. And when you're talking about, you know, that, I mean, we met.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, they don't know this. Okay. I'm not going to expose everything on All In, but I love this brother here. But the first time I met Rick, he actually led worship at my church with a guitar. This guy can sing and play, and he rocked the house. So
in that world, I mean, we're talking about vulnerability, right? And honesty. And there's a balance that you kind of have to be conscious of, especially when you're a pastor.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't work so well in that mode from a counseling perspective, because I was always just a little bit just head on. And even though I had compassion in my heart, there was still just this welling up inside of me. It's like, you know, I'm praying to God, I can't get a job, you know? And I'm like, show up to the interviews. You just told me you missed the interview last week. You don't have a job. It's not God's fault you slept in, you know? But that's the approach I would take. And
it's a Bible verse that says, he who chases fantasies will end in destruction, but he who works his land will prosper. You know, the Bible isn't this story of, you know, even what is the Bible in Hebrews? It says, run with endurance. That means as I'm waiting on God, I'm running, I'm moving, I'm making edgeway towards something. It's not this idea of just sitting back and letting it fall. I remember a story, and it was a guy who had come in, and him and his wife were going back and forth, and he didn't have a job at the time. And I said, is he applying? She said, yeah, every day. I said, well, he keeps swinging. Someday he's going to hit something.
Yeah, right on.
I had a buddy in college, when he graduated, he went to 17 interviews, and on the 18th interview, he got a job making $500,000 a year. You know, so it's about working and being available and always looking at opportunities. When I first went into ministry. You know my story. And I started off in corporate America. I have a BS from the Lumpkin School of Business. And my passion was just making money until God had a different plan. And one of the things I told the Lord early on is that if I ever get an opportunity to do something, I'm going to say yes. Now, granted, as the church grows and things get different, it's different. But for the most part, when anyone asks me to do something or go somewhere or speak somewhere, I say yes. And those opportunities then create other opportunities and other things start to fall. So I would say, like, man, don't give up, and don't pretend like, God's co-signing laziness, or God, he's not co-signing. And now don't get me wrong. I believe that he's sovereign, that he's working things out, but he limits his own sovereignty so that we have freedom. So that we have freedom of the will, and our decisions actually have real consequences. So I just want to pressure people to say, hey, take responsibility for the outcomes of your life, and don't give up. You're a prime example when you really think about it. And in order to do that, you have to fight through the rejection. You have to fight through the pain of thinking you might not be good enough. You have to fight. You know how we grew up.
Oh, yeah,
You
man.
have to fight through your own history. You have to fight through all of the naysayers, all of the people in your past that know you as Rick, as he used to be. How could he be running this company? How could Thaddeus be doing? You have to fight through all of these things and keep on fighting. Don't give up.
It's also the people in your present too.
Oh,
So through all the levels of success or failure that you start to achieve, there's rejection that comes in many different forms.
They call them haters, I think.
Right
still.
on, yeah.
You got a ton of them.
You can't. You read the comments on Instagram.
I mean, I don't know who it was, Drake or somebody said, I don't read comments. I once we started getting on a bigger platform, I just quit reading comments.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You haven't done anything significant if you don't have haters, And I think at any level of leadership, you have to have close people that have known you forever, that you can talk to and be open with and honest with. But there's a lot of people that'll come around that want something from you, that are looking for this, and you just have to be very aware, and very perceptive. So
always be grateful and confident in your own decisions too. If I go back to my kids, when we pulled them out of public school and put them in online private school, it's they have teachers. They have Zoom rooms for live classes, and there's self-taught stuff, almost like YouTube learning style, right? And then they take exams and everything else. Half of their courses are self-taught. But I remember, man, even close family was like, what the hell are you doing? And this was like 9 months before COVID. Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean,
yes.
Even the rejection can come from those closest to you. Most of the time, the harshest rejection can come from those who are closest to you.
Oh, man. And when you were just saying that, I had so many thoughts running through my own head. When I left corporate America, and I had a 6-figure job, and I was 22, 23.
Yeah.
And I left, and I remember my dad saying, why would you do this? And I was like, Dad, it's just a passion of mine. And he couldn't wrap his mind around why I was doing that. And then when I looked later on in life, when I was pastoring another large church, I thought I had arrived. Part of the insecurity that I think I brought into that was that I didn't think I should have been a pastor. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I had the ability to do that. And it wasn't until really even with Freedom Church where I just said, you know what? I just started trusting and saying, God, if you got me here and you put me in this position, then you've made me for this, for such a time as this. And that we live in a world, Rick, where most men, and I hear about this in counseling behind the scenes over and over, most men are living with a lack of praise. And it's devastating. This is why we'll fight for our moms, because, mom would come around and you could be raggedy. And mom would be like, you're going to be the best. You're going to be the president. Moms have this sort of unconditional belief in their kids. And we still need that. But typically I always tell women, hey, if you're married to somebody, when was the last time you said you're great at this, you're good at, and I think having those key people around us, the family, your wife, your kids, and that support mechanism and using that strength out when you're facing rejection and everything else, it definitely helps.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things I try to do whenever I get young men at the church or young women. I say, hey, you don't understand. You're 18 now. You have your whole life ahead of you. You can do anything. Let me show you this path. Let me show you this path. How much money do you want to make? Where do you want to be in 10? And you start encouraging them and speaking that life into them, and boom, they become incredible human beings.
It's interesting how you're talking about men that way. And I look at the reciprocal with women, because men, it's words, right? It's, hey, you're great at this. With women, it's more actions. From men to women, right? Because it's things that it should be things that she doesn't even ask you to do.
Oh my God, Rick, you're hired at Freedom Church, okay? Because if you could just say that so in counseling, so men, when we're born, see our emotional. I'm at a podcast right now.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I'm doing. My brain, when I was born, was saturated with testosterone, which makes my emotional pathway like a country road. It's dull. In other words, I'm only thinking about this right now. But women, their brains are saturated with estrogen. And so their emotional pathway is an information superhighway. So if my wife were here, she would be here talking to you, thinking about the e-learning, wondering what email she has to send, thinking about work the next day. She has 1,000 boxes open, where here I am, I have one box open and maybe another, like, where are we going to eat after this? She has 1,000 open. So the number one need, especially in relationships for women across the board, and these are just studies, it's very simple. It's closing boxes. The word is affection, but affection is essentially thinking through their problems before they have to. So I'm always telling people, you want to get married, okay?
Yeah.
Here's what you have to do. You have to think through so now it's about to get cold. So when it gets cold and the snow starts falling, I wake up and I'm going to go scrape the car if I need to. If there's dishes I'm going to go wash the dishes, or at least I got old enough kids. I'm going to make them do it. But it's closing all of those boxes, And if guys ever figured that out, we would be much better off in our relationships.
Coming tomorrow with Christmas, there's actions that the dudes can do just getting up in the morning, man.
Oh man.
I mean, get her coffee, make sure that the kids are fed, because Christmas, I mean, most are spending it at home. Most aren't taking off to Florida, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But spending that time at home, maybe there's some extra presents that need to be wrapped. And you know what? Am I a great gift wrapper? Yeah, I'm okay, but does it matter at this point, versus it just being done, because if it's a box, it's a literal box, it could be closed.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna really help the guys out on this podcast, top 4, okay, affection, closing boxes, and that's everything. When I think about the stuff that I used to argue about, I mean, now it's a 5-minute mission my wife wants me to go on. And I don't have time. No, man, I will get up. I'll move. Okay. You want me to do what? Okay. And I don't look around. Yes. Okay. That's it. I'll do it. But you got to start thinking through, what is it that she's walking around saying? Hey man, I was just worried about this, or I was saying, and so now you're proactively thinking along the lines with her. So affection is number 1. Second biggest thing for women is communication and conversation. That's how we won. That's how I won my wife. I was sending her letters, an email, text during the day. Hey, babe, just thinking about you, love you, blah, 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 blah. And then when you get married and now you're in it, you're kind of familiar and you just let it all slide. And so reminding yourself that she's a communicative person that you have to conversate with the same way you won her over, you got to keep doing that. And then the third one, which is huge, openness and honesty. But my wife knows all of my Facebook, it's Instagram, whatever. If somebody texts me some type of weird comment, I'm like, hey, Joe, come here. Well, why don't you respond to this? Openness and honesty. And then this is a big one, especially during the holidays, because men, we get so distracted, prioritizing the family. Keep making, you look at the way your wife lights up when you go and watch that terrible musical play with all these random kids, and your kid has a 1 minute piece, and then you're sitting there. But the fact that you make your family a priority to her, these are huge triggers in the minds of women. So that's usually where I when I'm counseling a couple, like, hey, have you thought about these steps? Because our minds are just wired differently.
Yeah.
Guys are easy. We want sexual intimacy. That's always number one, especially for the younger guys. It kind of goes down a little bit, but it's always there. And then this is a big one, ladies. If you're watching, recreational companionship. Every guy has something that he's an expert in that has nothing to do with his job. I play golf. You can ask me a question about a golfer or a club or a this or that. I mean, I spend countless hours doing it with buddies of mine, and we're not really talking. We're just connecting in this way. And then the other two, which we kind of hit on for guys, is respect and praise. Every guy knows when they're being disrespected. That's why I don't disrespect you, Rick. We have a radar of disrespect. And so we we'll fight it out, and then we'll be back friends again. That's how guys are. And then the last one is praise. And there's probably a lot of listeners that have never sat back and gone to their husband and said, hey, you're great. I'm so glad you did this. Even if you make more money than them, that's not really the issue. It's whether or not you're bringing words of affirmation into your home and encouragement. So that's about all I got in terms of marriage, but that's a good 2-minute snippet of how you can maybe. I
love it. There's going to be stressors this year too with Christmas on this.
Oh yeah.
Especially the isolation, man, for those that can't see family this year, and of course it varies state by state, but then you're also hitting on all of these things, man. It isn't even just married couples. It has to do with even just communicating with your kids, loving on your kids.
Oh yeah.
They need everything you just referenced right there, and multiplied times 10 this year.
Yeah.
Especially because look at the pressures that they've got, man. I mean, they're having to learn in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And I remember the first 3 months with my kids, it was just like we were living in the 7th level of hell. During the first 3 months of this type of learning, right?
Didn't you think at the end of last year, I don't know if you were the same way, but it was like a month where we had left. And I was kind of like, whatever, like one of those, like, it's fine. It's fine. Yep. What'd you get on that test? Don't worry about it. And then I didn't realize, we got a whole nother year of this. Yep. And then it's like, okay, so I when you said 7th level of hell, I felt that.
No joke. But those are the pressures they're feeling too.
Yeah.
And then if they're lacking family this year, because kids are used to seeing their cousins, they're used to seeing their grandparents on Christmas, they're used to receiving gifts, right? And this year, we were just talking about this, that we're not really even doing any gifts this year. We're just going away. And even with like a gift exchange and everything, we've been this way for a few years now, because like we're in a good position.
Yeah.
Right. And my kids can have literally almost everything that they want, which I'm so grateful for that, man. But it was one of my kids' ideas 2 years ago to be like, you know what? Instead of our grandparents or our aunts and uncles getting us gifts this year,
right?
Can we feed some kids? And this was at the time, it was my 8-year-old who was asking this question. It's like, that's great. So we set up a page with a local charity, and to where everybody could give to this charity instead of giving us gifts.
Sure.
And I think to now, like, it's next to impossible in a lot of states to even get together for a gift exchange.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really like bringing us back to the meaning. It's like, what really is Christmas, man?
Oh, man. Man.
Because I see it as like all of the stuff that we thought was so important. And this is like bringing it full circle to what you were talking about at the beginning. Was just completely stripped away this year. To where it's like back to the central unit.
Absolutely. Well, if I were to define the Old Testament, I would say it's a history of our propensity towards idolatry. And idolatry is when you take good things and turn them into ultimate things. And we can do this with anything. And any of those things that is not the ultimate thing can be stripped away. That's why they call Christ an anchor. Of my story and how I was in a place where I felt, as in terms of ministry, I had arrived. I'm at an $8 million building, this and that, and people look at me a certain way when I walk in the room, and you'd like to say I'm humble, I don't feel that, but you can't, But when that was all taken away, it would be like, Reach Out IT going bankrupt tomorrow, And this is something where you're defined by, and in my head, I found I made some of those things ultimate things. And I didn't realize it until it was all taken away that I didn't even need those things. And then now on the other side of it, God gave us a building twice as big. And I don't want to say I don't care as much. I don't, because it's a thing. And the ultimate things, the things that God deems valuable is him and you.
That's it.
Love God, love others. The only thing Christ said for us to do was have a glass of wine with friends around a table talking about the great stuff he did. Because he didn't come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people live. So when I think about Christmas, I mean, these are the principles your kids are learning at this age. And sometimes people, when they're watching this podcast or they see somebody in a position of success, they think, oh, they don't have any problems. Because in their mind, they think if I had enough money, all the problems would go away. But you can attest, it just makes the problems different.
Yeah.
Makes them bigger in some ways. And some way you're worried about staff, you're worried about employees, you're worried about other people. And so some things get a little bit more complicated. But once the idea of if I had enough money, the subtlety of the idolatry, we turn so many things into ultimate things, and those things will all leave us bankrupt. That's why I'm always pushing people to say, hey, what's your anchor in? And if it's not in something that's immovable and shakable, you might find yourself. It could be your health. It could be even your kids and your family members. I did a funeral for a guy who lost his child tragically. And so these are moments in life where you have to have hope in something beyond. So
there's a phrase I heard one time that says, money doesn't solve all your problems, but it sure does help.
Oh man, I like a better one. I've never seen anyone mad on a Sea-Doo. Okay, so
that's fantastic.
No, but but ultimately, money is a tool.
Yeah.
We couldn't have the church building. We couldn't rehab it. We couldn't move forward without money.
Yeah.
These are the money. There's the Bible says money answereth all things in the earth. And so you have to have something in order to produce other things. And I salute to you. I know you have a philanthropy piece to you, and now your kids are doing it. And so that's awesome, man.
It's
so
a lot of fun.
If they want to feed other kids, you're more than welcome to come to my house, and then you can feed these. My son, I don't know, he's growing, and all he does is eat. So
I feel the same way, especially with my 13-year-old who's a swimmer too, man. And
my goodness. It's like a empty hole.
It is. It's incredible how he comes home and eats 4 12-inch quesadillas, after swim.
And then an hour later, he's like, Dad,
exactly.
Dad, what are we eating for dinner? We ate dinner. Oh my God.
Oh man. There's a lot of people too that have thrived through this, the past several months from a financial perspective.
Oh yeah.
And this year, it's like, if you don't have family around to give gifts to them, meaning extended family, your kids and everything, there's so many other places that it can go.
Oh yeah.
This year. Even to a church, for example, to support those things.
We're more than open. If people want to go to freechurch.org, you're more than welcome. But I think giving is such a personal thing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too preachy, but I would say to be, led by the Spirit, led by God. And we all know scenarios. And when you get wind of a scenario of someone that's hurting in this season, what would it hurt to give them $100, give them $200,
Yeah.
give them a food thing so they can go out and have a dinner or buy gifts for their kids or, so I would just challenge people to be aware of their surroundings because I don't think anything happens by chance. And when you see somebody come, and I'm not saying just anywhere down the street, somebody doing drugs, and I'm not talking about that. I'm saying there's people you're connected to that maybe they've lost a job. Maybe one of the parents have lost a job and you're in a position where you can bless them and help them. I would say, man, that's when you get that prompting, that's what I would call God talking to you, moving on your heart. So that's incredible, man. Hopefully more people do that this season.
That'd be great. And being Christmas Eve, it might be a little late to rein in the spending a bit this year, but maybe look around at the gifts you bought and be like, maybe we can take half these back.
Yeah.
I know it's a tall challenge, but does it really matter? Or maybe half those gifts you bought for your kids or whoever can go somewhere else, because that's part of the pivot too.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if everything's been stripped away in most years, most quote unquote normal years, open up new credit cards, and go into major debt to give their kids or families just these amazing, lavish Christmas days.
Sure.
And when that's really not what matters to begin with. And I remember, and I don't even know if my family listens to my show, but that's okay. But gift giving was almost more of like an obligation. And I hated that, man. Which is why there's this huge philanthropic side of me, because I love to give. The giving to me is more about what it does for the other person or the organization. And let's shift that around. Maybe take some of those gifts and I don't know, this is just brainstorming here. It's like, here's the half for my kids, but then we're going to give this other half and be like, hey, you know what? Let's go drop these off somewhere.
Yeah.
At a church or something, because maybe there's a family who lost their mom or their dad this year because of COVID.
Yes.
And now they're on a single income.
Yeah.
And they can't do much this year.
Yeah.
So let's go do that. I mean, you enroll your kids into that mindset and they're going to learn to go that way and they're going to stay that way. And if you don't think that they can, you know what? It's going to suck this year and you're going to really see where their heart is. But this is the hard part. This is why I was no good at the counseling part either. It is because, because if they scream and throw fits and everything like that, it's like, parents, you've got to put a mirror in front of yourself, because the only way that they have that mindset that they deserve or are entitled is because of the environment that's been created for them already.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is such an awesome year in a positive way, because everything sucks.
Yeah.
You can just take away some of those things and say, hey, let's just flip our mindset here.
Yep.
And see what really matters.
Well, not just as a church, but we've always gone and fed the homeless. These are specific things we're doing with our young people so that they have a different perspective. I don't want to talk about the ways that I give. I feel like it's kind of between me and God, but specifically, I think about the brother who's gone through the stroke, and then I think about his kids.
Yeah.
And I just imagine where my family would be if the tables were turned, And those are the type of stories that I want to come along and bless and give to and help them.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's not going to replace the fact that dad is in a bad place, but it's a little glimmer of hope. This is the gospel. It's the good news that when you don't deserve anything, something comes along that just sparks that hope. And if you could get, you got 100,000 people watching, if you could get a portion of those people thinking that way, in those little small areas, the effect that it could have would be just incredible.
That's phenomenal. Dude, you lift me up all the time, and you always have.
Likewise,
ever since
brother.
we met. And I enjoy watching on Sunday too at freedchurch.org.
Oh man, you've been a big part of the mission since day one. So shout out to Rick. He has definitely helped us with our production, and this guy's incredible. So appreciate
Absolutely. Check out the Easter video from this year, but for Christmas this year too, go to freedchurch.org.
Oh yeah. And we got some fun stuff coming once we decide to fully open our doors and everything seems right where we're at. It's going to be a wave.
It's cool that the streaming stuff is never going to stop now.
No, it's too late. It's over.
Yep, you got it right on. Man, anything you want to leave with people today? That just one thing to grab to.
Man, hope, hope. Anything that pulls the plug on hope is not from God. So keep hoping, keep believing, keep moving forward, set goals, set a vision, and just know that the future, your latter days are better. The days that are ahead are better. So I would just say keep hoping, especially during this season.
Love it. Now we'll high five.
Hey, there we go.
Yep.
Cool, brother.
What's shaking? Thank you for joining me on the All In Podcast. Click the subscribe button and smash that bell for notifications. Text me, 312-535-8520. Follow me on social media at Mr. Rick Jordan. See you next episode. I am Rick Jordan, and I approve this message.